Questions to the Prime Minister. Bird.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure the House will want to join me in welcoming the President of the Dutch Senate and the Dutch parliamentarians that are with us. Goedemiddag, hartelijke welkom, dames en heren. Mr. Speaker, 100,000 jobs in Scotland are under threat from a no-deal Brexit. The Scottish Government's top economic advisor has warned that this could create a recession worse than the 2008 financial crisis. The Prime Minister must rule out no deal right here, right now. Why is she still blackmailing the people of this country?
The right honourable gentleman might not be surprised if I point out to him that there are only two ways for ensuring that no deal is taken off the table. And it's no good members of the SNP shaking their head or muttering from a sedentary position. They need to face up to the facts. We will not revoke Article 50 because we're leaving the European Union. So the only way to take no deal off the table is to vote for the deal.
Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think it will be for Parliament to decide. And of course, there are other options. We can extend Article 50 and we can have a people's vote. Prime Minister, look at the faces of her colleagues. She is fooling no one. Parliament will not be bullied into a false choice of accepting her very bad deal or no deal at all. MPs from Scotland must now decide. Will they stand up for Scotland or will they stand up with the extreme Brexiteers and the Tory benches? Today the Scottish National Party will move an amendment to rule out no deal under any and all circumstances. Scottish MPs can back the SNP or betray voters in Scotland. Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister finally end this Brexit madness and vote for the SNP amendment tonight?
Can I say to the right honourable gentleman, he talks about an extension to Article 50 or a second referendum. That doesn't actually solve the problem. That doesn't deal with the issue. The issue is very simple. Do we want to leave with a deal or without a deal? And that's the question that SNP MPs and every other MP will face when the time comes. But then he talks about betraying voters in Scotland. I'll tell him what's betrayed voters in Scotland. As SNP Scottish Government that has raised income tax, so people in Scotland are paying more in income tax than anywhere else in the UK. An SNP Scottish Government that has broken its manifesto promise and raised the cap on annual council tax increases for homeowners. And an SNP Scottish Government that means people are facing the prospect of an extra tax for parking their car at their workplace. And all of that...
Order! There is a fest of undignified arm-waving and bellowing, Mr. Kerr, from a sedentary position. Calm yourself, man. Take some sort of soothing medicament which you will find beneficial. The Prime Minister...
And all of that in a year in which the Scottish Government's block grant from Westminster went up. The real people betraying the people of Scotland are the SNP Scottish Government.
Layla Moran.
Mr. Speaker, one homeless person dying on our streets is enough for a national shame. Yet the latest figures show that in 2017 there were nearly 600. And in that same year, the Vagrancy Act was used over 1,000 times to drag homeless people before our courts. Crisis, Centrepoint, St Mungo's and MPs on both sides of this House are agreed it's time to scrap this law. Would the Prime Minister consider meeting with us and the charity so we can make the case for why we shouldn't wait one more day?
Here. I say to the Honourable Lady, as I think I indicated in the Prime Minister's questions in answer to questions last week, we have seen, certainly in terms of the number of people sleeping on our streets, we've seen those numbers down for the first time in 8 years. But of course, there is more to do on that issue, on the wider issue of homelessness. There's more to do in terms of building more homes, and we are doing that. But I will ensure that the relevant Minister from the relevant department meets the Honourable Lady to discuss this.
Mr. Robert Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Residents in North Point House, in my constituency in Bromley, have ACM cladding on their building. They are paying out £5,000 a week for a waking watch. Repairs remediation will cost £3 million. They have a fire brigade enforcement notice expiring on the 30th of April. The flats are valueless. They cannot raise the money against them. The freeholders and the developer, despite personal intervention by the Secretary of State, for which I am grateful, refuse to accept liability. Under those circumstances, will the government accept it may be necessary to intervene directly to ensure that those innocent flat owners are not out of pocket?
Well, can I say to my honourable friend, first of all, he's obviously raised a very important issue, and I know, as he said, he's been in touch with the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government and also with the Treasury about this. We, as I've said previously, we do fully expect building owners in the private sector to take action, make sure appropriate safety measures are in place and not to pass costs on to leaseholders. And we've written to all relevant building owners reminding them of their responsibilities. They must do the right thing, and if they don't, we're not ruling anything out. I would also point out to my honourable friend that local authorities have the power to complete works and recover the costs from the private owners of high-rise residential buildings. But I'm sure that a minister from the MHCLG would be happy to meet with my honourable friend to continue to discuss this matter to ensure that the residents are given the peace of mind they need by the action being taken.
Caroline Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the event of a no-deal Brexit, the government has just decided that imports of medical supplies are to be handled by the same company that forced hundreds of restaurants to close because it was incapable of delivering chicken to KFC. It is literally horrifying that the PM's stubbornness is literally putting people's lives at risk through bargain bucket supply deals. So what guarantee can she give to patients who are watching us now, looking at this pantomime and farce in this House now? What guarantee can she give that they will be able to get their vital medicines when they need them in the event of that no-deal Brexit?
Sir David Crosby.
As a former shop steward and works convener, I completely understand the need to approach the cliff edge in order to secure a deal. But rational negotiators never go to the edge, hold hands and jump into the abyss. So when will the Prime Minister recognise that constructive discussions should take place without the nuclear option of mutually assured destruction?
George Freeman.
Mr. Speaker, public trust in politics is dangerously low. Failing to honour and deliver the EU referendum result cannot be an option. I campaigned to remain, but I'm 100% committed to leaving. The question is how. Most of my voters in mid-Norfolk said they wanted to be in the common market, not a political union. Given the clear warnings from the life science and agriculture sectors, key industries in Norfolk, about the danger of no deal, could I welcome the Prime Minister's decision to give this sovereign House the vote and ask that if the House votes against, she'll look at EFTA instead of the backstop, giving us the common market 2.0 that most British voters want.
Say to my honourable friend, as I said yesterday in the answer to questions, I think it was in answer to a question from our right honourable friend, the member for Harlow, the first aim of the government, and my first aim, is to bring back a meaningful vote that can command support across the House, such that we are able to leave with a deal. And the arrangements within the political declaration, I believe, have significant benefits in relation to issues such as customs, but they also provide for us to have an independent trade policy and to bring an end to free movement. And my honourable friend talks about trust in politics. I believe those were important elements of what people voted for in 2016, and it's important that we deliver on that.
Helen Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister previously committed to a meaningful vote on her Brexit deal, but had to be forced by the courts to hold it. She then committed to that meaningful vote in December, but pulled it at the last minute. And when her deal fell, to the worst government defeat in history, instead of listening to MPs, she carried on regardless. So I ask the Prime Minister, what guarantee will she give this House, other than her word, that we will be able to vote to stop a no-deal Brexit before the 29th of March?
Bambos Charalambos.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the last few months in my constituency, a 98-year-old man was killed in an aggravated burglary. An Asian couple were robbed, held hostage and beaten in their home. School children were mugged at knife point, and a spate of burglaries have been committed across Enfield Southgate. My constituents do not feel safe. Does the Prime Minister recognise the severe consequences of underfunding our police service, and will she commit to restoring funding for community policing to pre-2010 levels.
Justine Greening.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With the government's review of higher education still underway, does the Prime Minister agree that the reintroduction of maintenance grants would be one outcome that could clearly aid social mobility for more disadvantaged students?
Can I say to my right honourable friend, first of all, I recognise that she has been a huge champion for social mobility and continues to be championing that social mobility. She is asking me to provide a solution in relation to higher education funding and student finance before the Auger report has been received and has been published. All I can do is assure her that obviously the work has been going on by Philip Auger and his panel in relation to looking at this, and we will look very seriously at the proposals they bring forward.
Mr. Stephen Hepburn.
In my constituency of Jarrow, there's a wonderful young lady, 4-year-old Harriet Corr, whose life would improve dramatically if she had access to the cystic fibrosis drug Ocrambi. It's available in Ireland and many other European countries and is due to become available in Scotland. Will the Prime Minister intervene personally in the negotiations between the NHS and Vertex to ensure that Harriet's family are not forced to leave their home and move elsewhere, along with many other families in the country?
Can I say to the honourable gentleman, obviously I'm sure the whole House will recognise the concerns of Harriet and her family in relation to this issue. We do want to ensure that patients have access to the most effective and innovative medicines, but obviously at a price that represents value to the NHS. And NHS England has proposed its best ever offer for a drug, and this offer is the largest ever commitment of its kind in the 70-year history of the NHS. It would guarantee immediate and expanded access to both Ocambi and the drug Calideco for patients who need it. We've been following closely the discussions. The Secretary of State for Health and Social Care has offered a meeting with the global CEO of Vertex, NHS England and NICE in an effort to move this forward for the benefit of patients.
Joe Crawley.
Mr. Speaker, the Scottish Government have used their powers to increase carers' allowance to the level of job seekers' allowance. Yet, because carers' allowance is regarded as income under universal credit, this top-up is being undermined. Can I ask the Prime Minister, if carers' allowance is meant to help cover the extra costs incurred by providing care, then why are carers on universal credit being penalised?
Good question, Angela.
The honourable lady will know full well the way in which universal credit operates in order to encourage people to come into work, but I will, in relation to this matter, I will ask the Minister in the relevant department to write to her.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister and indeed the entire House knows the conditions under which her withdrawal agreement will have a majority. And the whole House and indeed the country now knows that as a result of yesterday's events, the prospects of the Prime Minister being able to achieve the necessary changes have been undermined and her negotiating position has been weakened. I mean, that's the reality of the situation. And can we have an assurance in terms of any possible extension? And I'd be interested to know what the Prime Minister thinks the purpose of the extension would be. But can we be assured that she will continue to focus on getting those legally binding changes? And hopefully during any future negotiation she will not be undermined in the way that she has been so far.
Can I say to the right honourable... Can I say to the right honourable gentleman, first of all, we are continuing to press for those legally binding changes. Those are the discussions we've been having with the European Commission. It is what I have spoken to every European Union leader about over the last 10 days or so. It's what I was speaking to people about at Sharm el-Sheikh over the weekend as well. He talks about the extension to Article 50. Can I be very clear again? The government doesn't want to extend Article 50. The government's policy is to get the legally binding changes so a deal can be brought back to this House and this House can support the deal and we can leave on the 29th of March with a deal.